One of the biggest steps I believe to be very important is differentiating between sex and intimacy. In our society, those words have become interchangeable, and they're not. They're very different. Sex can be part of intimacy, but intimacy and establishing intimacy before you even broach or get into, sexual conduct is just as important, if not more important. So that's usually where I start with clients, is talking about, okay, how do you establish the intimacy? And then I teach them the difference between sensual and sexual, because again, those words are used interchangeably, like not the same thing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Love, Laughs, and Lessons. And I'm Dr. Frankie, and we are in the Let's Talk About Sex series. We have another guest on today that we're really excited to share with you. So much knowledge. She's going to talk about all that good stuff that we like to delve into. And before we do that, I just want to say thanks to Denise Rai, my co-host, for being here. And she's going to go ahead and introduce our guest.
Yeah, always a pleasure. And we are joined by Dr. Robin Buckley, an acclaimed clinical psychologist with a PhD from Hofstra University. Dr. Robin is a specialist in cognitive behavioral therapy and executive coaching. Her insights have been featured across various prestigious platforms like Entrepreneur, Chief, Authority Magazine, Nike, and even on the TED stage. An international speaker, Dr. Robin is dedicated to integrating cognitive behavioral strategies like mental wellness at work and championing women's equity and empowerment. As a coach, she leverages these strategies to assist organizations, couples, and individuals in crafting strategic plans for both professional and personal success. So keep an eye out for her upcoming book, Marriage Inc., Step-by-Step Business Strategies to Build Your Relationship, set to release this year. So just had to do that little plug for you. Okay, but welcome, Dr. Robin.
Appreciate it. It's good to be with both of you.
So how'd you get into this work?
Oh, I love this work. As you know, with your background as well, Frankie, I did a lot of clinical work for a long time, and unfortunately, the model around clinical work is still intervention and crisis. And coaching allowed me to take more of a proactive approach with my clients. And while I do a lot of work with leaders and female executives, it morphed into focusing a lot on couples work. So I do couples coaching for clients who come from all different backgrounds, beginning of the relationship, well-established relationships, but basically helping them find the satisfaction and the fulfillment that they're really looking for in all areas of their relationship.
Yeah. And do you feel like it is a continuum? Do you feel like, the relationships that we're having with one another and then professional relationships, do you see that when you work on one area that it solves the other areas?
Absolutely. What amazes me, Denise, is when the people I work with, they'll come in, maybe for the business side of their life or the relationship. And there's so many things between both of those that can really dovetail and you can use it. So I'll have female executives who will be telling me the frustration they're having with their significant other in their romantic life. And when I ask them, well, how do you manage conflict at work? And I'm like, why can't you do the same things at home? And they're like, oh, no, that's different. I'm like, it's not different. It's not. You can apply the same strategies. And the same when you walk through the door at work, that there can be a humanity to being at work that you usually use in your home relationships. So yeah, the continuum, I think, can swing both ways, and we can learn a lot from both sides to make our relationships really effective, whether at work or at home.
So what are folks coming in with? Like, what do you...
Just get right to the nitty gritty.
Well, in relation to the theme of your podcast right now, I would say, everybody knows, finances, parenting, stress, roles in a relationship, but certainly sex is one that comes up almost all the time. And what cracks me up is very often couples, when I will just flat out ask, well, how's your intimacy? How's your sex life? One or both will be like, oh, I didn't know we were going to talk about that. I'm like, really? It's a relationship. Like, we're going to talk, I'm at least going to ask. I mean, whether you want to talk about it or not is up to you, but yeah, it's definitely something. And I think that all the other variables, the stressors that we typically hear, parenting, finances, that kind of stuff, it impacts our intimacy with our partner, and vice versa. So, yep, we
For
did
sure.
right
Isn't
in.
that interesting how couples don't expect, or even individuals, singles that come in and
Right.
you inquire about their sex life and they're just like, wait, what? A deer in
Right.
headlights. And
Separate department.
Absolutely. Or when I ask
Aisle
them,
7.
yeah, when I ask them about their wellness, they're like, oh, well, they talk about their mental wellness, they talk about their emotional wellness, their social wellness, their physical wellness, and I'm like, uh-huh. What about your sexual wellness? And they're like, oh, I didn't know. I'm like, it's part of who you are. It's
Yeah.
well-rounded if we hit all the areas. But it's amazing that in our society, sexual wellness is just discounted as just one of the factors that make us satisfied and healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's our job, I think, as practitioners to really
Agree.
talk about it and help normalize and make them
Yeah.
feel comfortable and realize, all right, like the word pussy or vagina or, all these, like we just start using it. I use it with
Right.
clients. They're like, oh, okay, I can roll with this. I think it's okay. It takes a little bit of, a little warming
Yeah.
up to.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, it's not going to make me uncomfortable. So let's
Right.
figure out
Exactly.
I
together.
think it's funny because it's the names or the things that we say in our head, but we're so afraid to say out loud.
Yeah.
Right.
I love the clients, and not even clients, the people who will still whisper. No, I went to my doctor's talking about my vagina, and I'm
Or
like,
down
right.
Down there.
down there.
It's okay. There are words for this.
Yes. Yeah. The vulva. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So I guess like our listeners are just, I love, and we know from them that they want to know, like they are often, they have a growth mindset. They want to learn tools and skills and want to figure out, okay, how can I be better? How can I show up better? How can I evolve? And I know a lot of them are single and they're wanting to really be working on themselves on the journey to finding somebody. So they're not looking for somebody to complete them. They're looking, right? They want a partner, a companion. They're already completed.
Right.
So what could they be doing on this journey in their sexual wellness, I guess, if we're going to talk about sex?
I think there's so much that they can do prior to being in a relationship and then in a relationship. But one of the biggest steps I believe to be very important is differentiating between sex and intimacy. In our society, those words have become interchangeable, and they're not. They're very different. Sex can be part of intimacy, but intimacy and establishing intimacy before you even broach or get into, sexual conduct is just as important, if not more important. So that's usually where I start with clients, is talking about, okay, how do you establish the intimacy? And then I teach them the difference between sensual and sexual, because again, those words are used interchangeably, like not the same thing. We're very different. So an easy practice or homework activity that I give clients is to define their sensual preferences. What are the things for each of their 5 senses that they really love, that makes them feel comforted or joyful or soothed? And it's a nice, easy way to get it, because as soon as I say sensual, they think sex. I'm like, no, we're not even going to go there yet. Like, tell me what you love. So they'll bring up, well, I really like the smell of lavender. I'm like, okay, so where in your bedroom, where in your house do you have that incorporated? And we build this sensual menu, basically, where they start to create an environment that for both partners is hitting all of their 5 senses. Because as the 3 of us know, when you get all of your senses involved, that can really enhance potential sexual interaction. And it's safe. It's a safe place to start with them before we really dive into what are some other things you can do.
So getting connected to their sensuality and building that up around them in their home, in their sanctuary.
Yep. And sharing it with, if there is a partner, so certainly doing that on their own for sure. But if there is a partner involved, sharing it so that your partner can participate and orchestrate some things. So one of the clients I worked with, he loved these dark chocolate brownies. He said that was one of his sensual things. And so when his wife wanted to make it a special night, she would stop at the bakery and she would bring home these dark chocolate brownies, and then they'd have it in the couch in their bedroom. And as they shared it and as he enjoyed it, and then he would bring in her favorite red wine, and it showed this like, that they both heard each other, that they wanted to enhance the environment, And very likely it then continued to progress because there was that shared connection.
Mhm.
That's beautiful. I like it. So would you consider that foreplay in a way?
It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
So it's not, it wasn't like when my client saw the dark chocolate brownies, he immediately thought they were going to have sex. And that was
Right.
a definite separation. It was just the opportunity to have the intimacy,
Mhm.
build the connection, which very often can make anything that might come later in terms of sexual contact just a natural progression. And it
Okay.
makes it a little bit more of an event. Not that sex always has to be an event. Sometimes it's good just to use it or lose it. Make sure you're on top of some kind of either clearly defined or loosely defined schedule.
Mhm.
But it allows for that opportunity, and for, if nothing else, just to have that shared time together.
Also thinking about the symbolism, right? The ways in which food can bite there. It's symbolic of like nurturing and like
Right. Right.
loving and
Yeah, when
yeah.
you remember what your partner likes, in ways that are really specific to what they've asked for. I mean, that to me is the foundation for a good, a satisfying sex life, is
Mhm.
being able to say, this is what I like, and this is why I like it. This is what it does for me, even at a simple level with brownies. And if you can do that and get in the sensual areas, it gets easier to do when it comes to really that very intense sexual practices or sexual behaviors.
So just the other day, my son, who hopefully is not going to kill me for mentioning this, but she's like, "Mom, do you think there's such a thing as like being sexually incompatible?"
Yeah,
And I was like,
that's a great
"Oh, that's
question.
a good question."
Yeah.
So I'm thinking now, what do you think? Is
I
that
do. I do, but I think it's more sexual communication incompatibility rather than
Mhm.
sexual incompatibility. I think there's lots of ways we can get through moments, times, and I don't know if I know of any couple I've worked with, or even in my personal life, where there isn't a time where things are just not quite matching up or not quite working. And you can decide, oh, I'm not attracted to the person anymore, or we're not compatible, or ask and talk and say, this is how I like this. Or if you don't know, I'm going to practice on myself and then I can show you. We can't, it blows my mind that we're still in a day and age where we expect our partner just to know what we like without telling him or her or them. It,
Mhm.
how would that be possible if we just don't, if I want my meal a certain way, I'm certainly going to tell whoever's preparing it,
yeah,
hey, a little less salt, or I really would love more vegetables. But when it comes to our practices on a sexual level, we freeze up and we don't ask. And some of it, I think, is just the stereotypes around that, particularly for females or people who identify as female. But it really, if you practice it, just like anything we practice, it gets easier, and it becomes just a fluid part of the whole experience, which again, I think enhances intimacy as well.
yeah. So communication, of course, like we always come back to the
Always.
importance of communicating,
Communication.
no matter
Yeah.
how hard it is
Yeah.
to go there, to just challenge ourselves to do that.
And there's a lot of strategies that I think can help. One strategy that I really love with clients, I call it the ABCZ list. And I get couples to create a chart, which of course they're like, Robin, this is too structured. I'm like, okay, are you happy with your sex life? Because we can do this, or you can stick with what's not working, but that's up to you. So they come up with this chart, and the A column are things that they have done sexually that they really like and want to continue. So that's an easy one. B is sexual activities that they've done like maybe once or twice, but they still want to revisit, like they're interested in. C is the list that's really interesting because it's things that one of the partners is really interested in and the other one is open to. So they haven't tried them yet, but they're like, okay, we can experiment. And then the Z list is absolutely not. Either one or both partners are like, nope, not into that. Don't really can't run my brain around that right now. Now, everything on those columns can flow. I mean, it's not like a static list that you never revisit, but it is amazing when couples start to have a structured forum to talk about really personal, really detailed things, that it allows them to have a little more distance from them. So they can say things and ask for things or talk about things because they're focused on the chart. And it works really, really well. And then I get them even further to say, okay, now let's organize this according to like, how much time do you need for these things? Like, is it something that you could just drop and go and you don't need a lot of time? Or you want to have sex on the beach again because you did it on your honeymoon. Okay, that's going to take some planning if you live in the middle of, Texas or wherever where you can't access a beach. So it becomes this really fun tool that they can continue to add to, that they're like, oh, we tried something on the C list. That is definitely a B or an A now. Or nope, didn't like it. It's on the Z list. And it's just a really easy way for couples to start to expand and promote the things they want in their sexual life.
Yeah,
And
that
I
sounds
imagine
fun.
it expands, right? Like if they're willing to even embark on this, exercise, I'm sure being curious and trying things out, and then there's reward. They feel like, wow, this feels good doing this. Let me try
Right.
something else new. So does
Exactly.
it ever go the other way where,
No,
no?
the Z list is what keeps it safe.
Mhm.
I've had couples who have told me they tried things and they moved it. I've had couples say they attempted and it was like a hard no right before it even got going. And I think what fascinates me, and both of you probably had this experience talking with people, is that the things that, and with no judgment, but the things that I would think would be like easy, no big deal, they might be on a column that I wouldn't have expected. And things that I would have been like, wow, that would have been over the top for most of my clients. They're on an A list. And I love
Yeah.
that. I love that it's so personalized and unique to that relationship. I have also had people who are uncoupled use that list too for themselves. Like, what are the things that I like? What are the things that I've done, but I want to get back to? And I really like that it isn't reserved just for couples, because certainly sex is not
Singles.
reserved just for
That's
couples.
right. Singles can use it too. And how often are the partners surprised at what's on the C list?
That is really a good question, Denise. I would say not as much as I think would be fun, but I would say about 25 to 30%. There's something that comes up and they're like, oh, or more often, oh my God, I totally forgot we did that. That would be fun to get back to, which I love. But I would say there are times, and you can see the hesitation, and that's why I really do, when we get to that C list, when I see the hesitation and I say, do you think that's a hard no, or is that something that you'd explore? And that's where they get to decide. And then of course there has to be that respect that if something's on the Z list, we're just going to table that. And usually I do encourage couples, okay, let's take, why don't you take a look at that tool in a month or in 3 months, whatever it works for the couple, to see if there's some things that need to either change, get added, get subtracted. But it becomes a dynamic tool because, again, it isn't just this, we do it once and then we're never going to have a conversation around what's on there again. So it does work. It is fun sometimes when the couples are like, did not know that's what you wanted. I'm like, conversation.
How often you see couples coming in where they're like, there's one person that really has a go-to way of engaging sexually and it's more constrictive or rigid, and the other one's like, I want to, explore, and there's this, they get locked up in that dynamic.
I think that my experience has been that happens a lot, and it isn't necessarily because of or restricted to just a couple or a type of couple. It seems to happen again in the clients I've worked with. It can vary throughout the relationship. There are times, and I work with a lot of women who are going through perimenopause and menopause. And I would say that is definitely a time that it can be, so many things can impact a couple or a woman's personal sex life. There's insecurities, there's discomfort with the body, there's physical discomfort. Doctors really don't know a lot about these topics, which blows my mind and infuriates me a little bit. But so a woman, and I've heard from partners, male or female partners, God, she was so into sex, and then all of a sudden it seemed to change. And it's understanding, then it becomes that education of, okay, let's think about what else is, what else could be going on, what else is happening. And it breaks my heart when the woman going through perimenopause or menopause somehow thinks like she's falling out of love, or she no longer wants sex, even though she thinks, it's such a mind game when those hormonal changes are happening. And it's wonderful when a couple can learn about it so that they can come up with workarounds, whether it's sexual workarounds, sensual workarounds, intimacy workarounds, so that they can have that connection, because it does not have to end. And I am a huge advocate that sex never has to end. I mean, I've worked with couples in their 80s and they are fun because if they're coming to see me, they definitely are open and wanting to know how this can continue in a really healthy life.
So like there's this idea that once we hit menopause, or, you know, we hit age 60, that we don't have a sex drive anymore. We just drop off a cliff. We become asexual.
Right. And oh my God, it pisses me off so much.
Me too. It's not true.
There was a wonderful interview that Halle Berry did a couple years ago, where she went to see her doctor because the sex she was engaging in with her partner, she described as feeling like glass was tearing her apart. And the doctor was like, ran her and her partner through STD testing and all these other things. And she had to do her own research to figure out what was going on. And I'm like, that. And she said, I thought I was broken. I thought that part of my life was over. And it, again, infuriates me and makes me want to cry when I hear this, because I'm like, no, you can be a sexual being, however you define that, for as long as you so choose. Sometimes it takes some tweaking, maybe a lot of tweaking, but it's possible. It's just knowing the professionals who actually know what they're talking about, and a partner who's willing to engage and support you.
Yeah.
I think at certain points we're going to have to support each other, right? Like there's an ebb and flow, and we all go through changes, and regardless of whether we're male or female, it's just
right. And having backup options. So again, that list that I have couples create is great, because if it's not working in one way, then let's pick something else off the list. Or if none of those are really feeling it, let's go to our sensual list and let's see what kind of touch feels really good that is not going to be sexual, but just makes us feel like we are connected on all levels, even if it doesn't involve sex. Yeah. I love it.
I see like a lot of people just struggling to, right now, all that's going on is just even to be connected, to stay connected, to feel connected. And I don't know what kind of encouragement you give folks to, like, okay, if they're feeling like, given the political landscape, I don't want to talk about politics, but like there's a lot of people feeling like I'm not in alignment with my person right now, and we're not agreeing on all the things, and the feeling of disconnection. So I wonder if there are ways, or for them, like thoughts that you have around that, because that's definitely coming up.
I start couples who feel disconnected with a simple question. When you were dating, when you first met, how did you establish connection? For lack of a better word, how did you woo the other person? What did you do? And then my follow-up question is, how many of those things are you still doing? And as you can probably guess, I would say at least 75% of those things go away after people are in a committed relationship, which, again, when I tend to push back a lot with my couples, I'm like, why? Why would you stop doing those things if you knew they were? I mean, that's a easy one. Like, if they work, keep doing it.
Right.
Until your partner says it doesn't work anymore. But we just stop. I talk to my
couple, right? We get comfortable.
And lazy.
And I'm like, every day, diligence, dedication, nurturement, and this idea that this person was special to you when you started dating. I'm assuming if you're still with them, you still consider them special. So why would you just negate it? And listen to the things that they're telling you they like. So, years ago, God, when my husband and I were first married, he would have this habit of walking by me in the morning on the way to the bathroom, and he would just drag his hand across my hip. And finally one day I was like, I really love when you do that. Like, it's just this little touch. And he's like, do what? And I'm like, you do this thing with your hand. And he's like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And he's like, I just like touching you. And I'm like, yeah, I love that. He does it every morning now, like for years, because I said that I like that. I pointed it out.
Yeah, we got to get that feedback.
Yeah, do the things and let your partner know if it's good, or bad or indifferent. Because ideally, in my perspective of relationships, when you ask for what you want and your partner wants to make you happy, then he or she will continue to do those things, which makes you happy, and then you'll reciprocate. It's this wonderful self-fulfilling prophecy. if you do the things.
Mhm.
And I think part of it, not to get too much into, sex differences, but for females and people who were raised as females, we just learn not to do that. We learn not to, we don't want to be too pushy or nag or be too domineering, or, we shouldn't be talking about sex. And it, again, is one of those infuriating things to me, because I'm like, why? If we taught girls early enough to talk about the things they want about whatever area of their life, they'll do it in all the areas. But we shut, as you both know, we shut girls down. And then we wonder why, a large majority of women do not have satisfying sexual wellness, or satisfying professional wellness, or any of the other areas of the life, because we learn, don't say it, and we should be givers and not receivers, which is
Mhm.
crazy.
That's actually making me think about how men are starting to feel shut down too, because of the whole Me Too movement that's come up. It's like they're afraid to misstep. So they're holding back. They're not really wanting, they're not able to stay embodied and show
No.
their affection, express their affection, be
Yes.
generous or chivalrous. So just
Right.
reminding me of that, how that's
I think that's a really good point, Frankie, that we can't negate. But again, we for many, I shouldn't say all, but for many men, they aren't given direction. And so then they're guessing, and now they're holding back, or God forbid, not holding back and just trying things and overstepping, instead of just saying, "Hey, I didn't like that. I don't like when you say that," or I don't like when you're like standing over my shoulder," or, "Oh my gosh, when you compliment my sweater, that really always makes me feel just confident." Like, it doesn't have to be lecherous or sexual. Sometimes it's just appreciation, and isn't that a good thing if we can communicate what works for us?
Mhm.
But I think women are on the defensive, men are on the defensive, and it's just like, how about we just be human? How about we just like, and if we misstep, or if someone missteps towards us, tell them, call them on it. My daughter, I have 4 kids, but my 19-year-old was in Boston over the weekend, on the T, going to meet her boyfriend. And she said, "Yeah, I get on. And oh my God, I was so angry at just all men." And I'm like, "Okay, what happened?" She said, "This group of guys was just catcalling me." And I'm like, "Okay, tell me what you did." Because now I'm curious, and I want to help her. And she's like, "I just turned around because I didn't know what to do. I turned around and I just said, 'No.' And I turned back around and I'm like, 'Okay, how'd you feel?'" I'm like, "Did they stop?" She's like, "Not right away." She said, "But they definitely got quieter, and then they left, they stopped." And she's like, "And I felt good because I was very clear that wasn't appropriate." I'm like, "That's awesome. Good. Good for you, kid."
yeah,
So,
There you
access to
go.
agency.
That's right. Because
um,
back in the day, we didn't say no. We just crossed to the other side of the street
Yeah.
Right.
or changed the way we whatever
Right.
because we thought it was us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And it's not. It's, and her older sister has a different personality. And her response was, "Oh my God, I love when guys catcall me." And I'm like, "Okay." And her, my younger daughter was like, "How could you like that?" I'm like, "Baby, that's not for you to judge. Like,
Right.
if she's okay with it, if it feels safe to her and it's not, compromising her, okay, that's okay." So it was a really interesting conversation.
It is
Also, I
very
think
interesting.
even recognizing what it is what we want. I think that's
Yes.
also
What
really
we like
hard,
tonight.
figuring out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did ask that question. I was like, "So what do you like when they catcall?" She's like, "It lets me know that I have power over them." And I almost died laughing. I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?" And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "They're all riled up. I could care less about them. I'm going to keep walking." And I'm like, I did something right.
Yeah. These are different times for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think when couples approach their relationship from a little bit more of, if they can establish somewhat more of an objective approach sometimes, so that it doesn't always feel fraught with emotion and subjectivity and all the baggage, when we can just have conversations that are strategic and effectively, effective with have effective communication, that's where I think the dynamics can really get enhanced. And I talk to couples about that, and then what I referenced at the beginning. What do you do at work that you can use at home? How can you separate out the things that really strategically work for you in a really objective, hopefully objective professional environment? How can you bring those into the home to enhance all the areas of your life. And I get a lot of pushback on that because couples are like, no, Robin, it's different. And I'm like, yeah, it's different because Hallmark and Disney and rom-coms tell you it's supposed to be, about wishes and dreams and fate. And I said, but that's not what maintains a relationship. That's not the foundation. But if you have a strong, for example, mission statement, and you're using it the way businesses do to organize your relationship, it's going to be as effective as businesses that use it. I mean, we watch some of the most powerful businesses have these strong mission statements, and it's what keeps people unified. But when I ask 99% of the couples I work with, what's your couple's mission statement? They don't have one.
Never thought about it. Yeah.
Right. Or the really fun ones are the ones that say, oh, no, we have a mission statement. I'm like, awesome. Both of you take a piece of paper. I want you to write them down. They're never the same. Sometimes they're dramatically different. And I'm like, that's where we need to fix it. So it's amazing that we try and reinvent the wheel instead of just saying, okay, what can I pull in that's really going to make this work?
So is that a good place to start for couples, to have a unified mission statement?
Yes, that's where I always start, Denise, is I ask them that question in session number 1. And if they don't, which the large majority don't, then they work on that. And I help them if they need it, but they work on it independently typically, and then they can either come back together on their own or in the next session with me. And we get it to a point. It's usually short because they want to be able to recall it.
Yeah.
And the coolest part about a couple's mission statement is, again, just like some of the other tools I talked about, it's not static. This is something they revisit. I usually encourage once a year. And it's also a tool in their daily lives. So when they're having conflict, when they're having a miscommunication, when they're behaviorally doing something that's creating a problem, I encourage them to go back to the mission statement and say, okay, are the things you're saying, thinking, and doing aligned with the mission? Which, of course, they're not if there's going to be an issue. And they get to, it centers them or grounds them again, so that then they can go back and look at the things they're thinking, saying, or doing to be able to adjust, so that then they're back in alignment with their mission statement. And it's really fun to watch and listen how they use it as that approach.
Can you give us an example of what a mission statement could look like? Because I'm sure people are like, a mission statement? How do I even what do I put in that?
Yeah. I usually say no more than 3 sentences.
Okay.
I've had couples do a couple words. So one that I remember very clearly, see if I got the words right. One couple's mission statement was unity, respect, and confidence, I believe was the last one, because that one stood out in my mind as I didn't quite, and they had to explain it to me. I've had other couples use full sentences. We will encourage each other to grow individually and collectively in order to enhance our future, our present and our future. So it can be, I don't want to say elaborate. It has to be short enough that the couple can recall it quickly. Another couple did one, we will approach each other and everyone in our life with kindness and respect in order to enhance our family and our community, because those were important values to the couple. So there's no right or wrong. I'd say the only wrong would be if it's lengthy, because then it just gets cumbersome. It's unique to the couple. Again, there's no I don't like that, from an outside person. If they like it and they can refine it, it also is a great opportunity for them to really dig down into what are their core values, what really brought them together as a couple, and what's going to keep them together as a couple. So that couple that talked about kindness, the one of the wives in the couple said that was one of the first things she noticed about her future wife was how kind she was, and that was a non-negotiable for her. She had to be with someone who was kind because that's how she was raised.
Right.
So it becomes an opportunity to revisit and remember what brought you together, and then establish it as a very clear variable that it's going to keep you together.
How often? So, there's this practice of intimacy that you're saying that couples need to bring into their life to enhance their sex life and their sexual well-being and all of these things. So how does that then fit in with their day-to-day? So are you recommending to them that they, do something intimate with one another daily, or does it have to be scheduled? What's too much and what's too little?
And are we talking about intimacy or sex?
I'm talking about intimacy.
Okay. Intimacy, I do believe, is important to be part of your daily life. And intimacy can look a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
My husband told me a year ago that it drives him crazy when I put a butter dish clean back in the cabinet without putting new butter in it. And I blew him off the first couple times he told me that because I was like, what's the big deal? It's butter. We got it out of the fridge. And he said, it's not just the butter. It's that I told you that it bothers me. He's like, I'll fill it if I get it out of the dishwasher first. He's like, but if you do it, you're completely blowing me off. You're blowing off something that is, I know, silly, but it's important to me. And it's whole, I was like, oh God, I've totally been doing that. It's those little things that might seem practical or no big deal, but it's important to your partner. And if they shared it and you're not doing it, why? That's the first question. Why are you not doing it? I wasn't paying attention. I've had other couples who say, I want to piss them off. So I mean, it's a a reality check sometimes, but
Yeah.
to me, that's intimacy because you've shared something that's important to you. I'm going to recognize it and do it whenever possible, when I have access to it. And now we're connected, even at a small level. But in terms of, so I don't necessarily believe that intimacy needs to be structured. I think it can be. I do think that couples who want an active sex life, I do think more structure around that is sometimes really important. I do believe the adage, use it or lose it, especially as you progress in a relationship, regardless of your age. And if you don't, it just becomes something that you lose track of, and you can go days, weeks, months, years without it happening. And we all see that in our exercise life, if we're learning a new language, and if we don't diligently practice it, it's harder to get back into it. We've forgotten stuff. It's not as easy. So for couples who again say to me, Robin, I'm not putting it on the calendar, and I'm like, okay, you don't have to, but that means that you're sticking with what you came to me as a problem, and that's your choice.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, this works.
What's a healthy amount? That's the question that I get a lot too.
That's up to the couple. And usually I just ask them, on a scale of, 1 to 5, usually I say, how often would you have sex and I usually start with every week. And some couples say, or one partner will say, nope, not weekly, monthly. I'm like, okay, we can do that. And so if if one member of the couple is saying 2 times a month and the other partner is saying 2 times a week, then we do math and we find the average. And we know that the person who wants it less is going to use that as an opportunity to develop intimacy because he or she heard their partner. And the person who wants it more will do other things, whether it's masturbation or whether it's going to work out to bring their number down to that mean level, whatever's that number in between. I think I have seen that work really well because both parties know that they're sacrificing or compromising. It's not one or the other. And I think when you both know you're working to make the other person as happy as possible, then it's easier to compromise. Yeah.
But how do you prevent it from feeling like a chore? Because I'm sure you get that a lot too, right? So your partner's sex drive is higher, yours is lower. I want to make sure I'm pleasing my partner, so I'm going to step it up. They're going to pull back. But for me, that's like really hard, and I don't want to do that.
Those are hard conversations, Denise.
Yeah.
And I don't relish those, but they're important. Usually it's a conversation of, what is acceptable to you. So, a couple, one member of a couple might say, well, I want sex, 3 times a week. And the partner might say that's really not something that I'm open to or willing to do. I'm willing to have sex once a week. But if your drive is really high, what else could I do for you? What else, would be okay? And it might be nothing. And could masturbation work? It could be, can I just watch you while you masturbate? Could it be that I help you in some way, whether it's oral sex or a toy or whatever? So I think then it becomes a conversation of, you don't sacrifice your complete self. You don't just give in. You don't want it to be a chore. And then I do try and redirect the person who is described it as a chore or something, an obligation. Oh, I hate that word. I try and help them reframe it in their head. So some of that cognitive behavioral stuff I'm pretty good at by saying, okay, how can you look at this as what are you adding to your relationship? what are you adding to yourself and what are you adding for your partner? And I take them through those 3 steps. So some of my clients are so funny. So one woman said, well, when I give my husband oral sex, I am in complete control and I have power. And I'm like, okay, so not a chore. Now you are all powerful. She's like, oh, so. All right, what are you giving for him? She's like, well, that's obvious. I'm like, yes, that is obvious. You're giving him pleasure. You're making him happy. And what are you doing for your relationship? She's like, I'm prioritizing that. I want us to be in a place where we both can get something out of it. I'm like, perfect. That's how, instead of like, oh God, really again, it's okay. What does it do for me? What does it do for my partner? And what does it do for our relationship overall?
Threefold. And then some.
I also had top partners who have said, okay, and they do a bargaining. Okay, I am happy to do that for you if you give me a massage after. I don't want sex, and so it becomes, as long as it's not quid pro quo, it's more like that would make me feel close, and I'm giving you what would make you feel close, and that can work too.
It's great that you pointed that out, like not one for one, right?
That's right.
Idea, keeping track, keeping score.
Nope.
We don't want to do that.
No. Sometimes it's just, I really like making you feel good, and that's satisfying to me for this night.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think prioritizing opportunities for connection.
Yeah. So important. Whatever that is.
Yeah. It's on a daily basis.
Yeah. Just
'Cause
something.
here we are with our cell phones and our tablets and
All
sitting
the
next to each other.
distractions.
Yes.
Yep.
And how many times have we seen that, right?
Yeah. And on the same level, those devices can be really effective. I mean, the couple that I've talked to about sexting and reminding them, like, this is fun sometimes to flirt with your partner, safely, hopefully nothing that, if it got found, you'd be embarrassed, and it's really fun to watch them adapt and use those tools. That I've had couples who are sitting on a couch with their kids in the middle watching a movie and they're sexting the whole time. And I'm like,
That is fun. Yeah.
Got to make it happen. However, if you got little kids and you're sneaking away for 5 minutes in the bathroom. Right?
Exactly. I've heard that one and I love that.
So how can folks find you, Dr. Robin?
Absolutely. So it's pretty easy. Dr. Robin Buckley, all one word, no punctuation, either on my website, so .com, or you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn as well. So all the same terminology to find me. And then on my website are all the options of how I can help couples or individuals, whether it's around relationships or just in their professional lives. I'm always happy to have conversations about what I do.
And do you work remote? Do you see folks in a group setting?
I work remote. I'm actually putting together some couples retreats, so that'll be coming hopefully at the end of 2025. And then I do have some couples who like in person, so I'm lucky enough that they fly me in, but that is not the norm. I'm willing to do it, but not the norm.
And where are you based?
I actually live down in Florida. We moved here a year ago from Maine, so we're getting to enjoy some very different weather this time of year.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise. And
absolutely. This was great fun.
Tools.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. We will see y'all next week. Kisses, hugs. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.